My name is Frank Miller, but for most of my life, I've been known as Grandpa Frank. I'm 69 years old, and on what should have been one of the most joyful moments of my year, Christmas dinner, sitting at a table I helped build, I realized I had never felt more alone. No one looked at me for long. Conversations changed direction when I joined them. Chairs shifted, just enough to create space where I used to belong. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, that families get distracted during the holidays. But silence has a sound when it's intentional. Tonight, I'm going to tell you what my family did to me, how I went from being the center of that table to something people carefully avoided, and how one sentence, spoken calmly and without anger, changed everything they thought they knew about me. Because when people stop seeing you, they assume you'll stay quiet. They assume you won't notice. They assume wrong. But before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been in a room full of people and felt completely invisible? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. To everyone who listens and understands how exclusion doesn't always come with shouting, thank you. Your support means more than you know. And if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. This channel exists for stories like this, the ones that remind us that dignity doesn't disappear with age. Now, let me take you back to that table, to the moment I finally spoke, and to why Christmas dinner would never feel the same again. Now, let me tell you my story. I arrived at Yvonne's house at 4:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I remember the exact time because I checked my watch twice in the driveway, trying to convince myself I wasn't early, wasn't too eager, wasn't that lonely old man who shows up desperate for company. The pie I brought was from the grocery store. Apple. Pre-made. I used to bake with my late wife Margaret, her famous pecan pie that everyone fought over. But my hands shake now when I try to measure ingredients, and the one time I attempted it alone, I burned it so badly the smoke alarm went off and I sat on my kitchen floor and cried. So, store-bought apple pie it was. I knocked. Yvonne opened the door wearing a red sweater and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Dad." Not "Merry Christmas, Dad," or "So glad you're here, Dad." Just, "Hi, Dad." Like I was the mailman. Inside, the house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon candles. The Christmas tree glowed in the corner, covered in ornaments my grandchildren had made over the years. I'd helped them with some of those. The popsicle stick reindeer, the glitter snowflakes that got glitter everywhere for weeks. My grandson, Ethan, sat on the couch with his phone. Didn't look up. "Hey, buddy," I said. "Merry Christmas." "Yeah, you too." Eyes still on the screen. Lily, his younger sister, glanced at me, then quickly looked away like she'd been told not to stare at something unpleasant. That's when the first cold finger of dread touched my spine. Marcus, Yvonne's husband, came out of the kitchen wiping his hands on a towel. He gave me a tight, uncomfortable smile, the kind you give someone at a funeral when you don't know what to say. "Frank, good to see you." He shook my hand. He'd never shaken my hand before. We weren't handshake people. We were hug people. Backslapping, joke-cracking people. But not today. "Dinner's almost ready," he said, and disappeared back into the kitchen like I was contagious. I stood in the entryway holding my sad grocery store pie, wondering if I should just leave. But then Sandra and Aurora arrived. My two other daughters. Sandra came in first, holding a casserole dish. She saw me, and her face did something strange, like she'd forgotten I'd be here and was now recalculating how to navigate the evening. "Dad, hey. Hey, sweetheart, Mary, I need to put this in the oven." She brushed past me. Aurora came in next with her husband, Tom. She looked at me, and I swear I saw something in her eyes. Something that looked like pity? Disappointment? "Hi, Dad." "Aurora, we'll talk later, okay?" She touched my arm briefly, like you'd touch a stranger, and moved past me into the living room. Then Thelma and Gertrude arrived. Thelma is Marcus's mother. We'd always gotten along fine. She's a retired school teacher, sharp as a tack, with a laugh that fills a room. Gertrude is her younger sister. Quiet, polite, always hovering at the edges of conversations. Thelma nodded at me. Frank. That's it, just my name. No warmth, no Christmas cheer. Gertrude didn't look at me at all, and that's when I knew. Something was very, very wrong. Dinner was called. We gathered around the table I had helped Marcus build 3 years ago. I'd sanded it, stained it, spent 2 weekends making sure it was perfect for family dinners, just like this. I sat down in my usual spot, and then I watched as everyone else carefully arranged themselves. Sandra pulled her chair slightly away from me. Aurora sat at the far end, as far from me as physically possible. Thelma and Gertrude positioned themselves across from me, but angled slightly away, like I was a bad smell they were trying to avoid. Marcus sat at the head of the table and immediately became fascinated with carving the turkey. Yvonne sat next to him, gripping her wine glass like it was a lifeline. The kids sat between their parents, forming a human buffer between themselves and me. Conversations started, about work, about the weather, about the new coffee shop downtown. I tried to join in. So, Aurora, how's the new position at... It's fine. She cut me off, eyes on her plate. Silence. I turned to Sandra. And how's... Can someone pass the rolls? She asked loudly, to no one and everyone. I passed them to her. She took them without looking at me. Thanks. Not, thanks, Dad, just thanks, like I was a waiter. I looked around the table. Every single person was avoiding my eyes. Conversations flowed around me, over me, through me, but never to me. My hands started shaking. I put them in my lap so no one would see. Thelma whispered something to Gertrude, and they both glanced at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Disgust? Fear? I didn't know. I tried to eat. The turkey tasted like sawdust. The mashed potatoes stuck in my throat. Ethan asked to be excused early. Lily followed him. One by one, people finished eating as quickly as possible, like they couldn't wait to leave the table. To leave me. I sat there, surrounded by my family, and I had never felt more alone in my entire life. Not when Margaret died. Not when I had my heart attack 2 years ago. Not ever. Because at least in those moments people had gathered around me, held me, told me they loved me. Now? Now they couldn't even look at me. And I had no idea why. You felt that, didn't you? That cold, creeping dread of being erased in plain sight. But here's what you don't know yet. Frank has no idea what he's being punished for. And the truth? It's going to shock you. Drop a comment if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. And if you want to see what happens when Frank finally demands answers, subscribe right now. Because next chapter is where the whispers become accusations, and Frank's world completely falls apart. Hit that like button if you're ready for the truth. It started 3 days before Christmas. I was in my kitchen making coffee, the instant kind because I still haven't figured out Margaret's old coffee maker, when my phone rang. Helen, my neighbor of 15 years. Frank, how are you holding up? Odd question. I'd just seen her 2 days ago when I brought in her trash cans. I'm fine, Helen. Why? There was a pause, the kind of pause people make when they're trying to decide how much to say. Oh, no reason. Just, well, I heard some things and I wanted to check on you. My stomach tightened. What things? Oh, just talk. Around the neighborhood. I'm sure it's nothing. Helen, what did you hear? Another pause. Maybe you should talk to your daughters, Frank. And she hung up. I stood in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, feeling like the floor had tilted beneath me. Talk. Around the neighborhood. What the hell did that mean? I tried calling Yvonne, straight to voicemail. I tried Sandra. Voicemail. Aurora. Voicemail. 3 daughters. 3 voicemails. I left messages. Casual ones. Hey, honey, just checking in. Call me back when you get a chance. None of them called back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the last few weeks in my mind. trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Had I said something offensive at Thanksgiving? No. I'd barely been there an hour before I felt tired and went home. Had I forgotten a birthday? No. I'd sent cards and checks to all the grandkids like I always do. Had I been too pushy about visiting? No. If anything, I'd been pulling back, trying not to be a burden. So, what was it? The next day, I drove to Sandra's house. She lives 20 minutes away in a neighborhood with those modern houses that all look the same. Her car was in the driveway. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. I could hear movement inside. The TV was on. "Sandra, it's Dad." The TV volume lowered, but she didn't open the door. I stood on her porch for 5 minutes knocking, calling her name, feeling like a fool. Finally, I left. I drove to Aurora's office. She's an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. The receptionist smiled at me. "Hi, are you here to see someone?" "My daughter, Aurora Miller." Her smile faltered, just slightly. Let me check if she's available." She picked up the phone, turned away from me, spoke in a low voice. Then she turned back, her smile now professionally sympathetic. "I'm sorry, she's in a meeting." "When will she be done?" "It might be a while. Can I take a message?" I left. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Yvonne one more time. This time, she answered. "Dad." "Yvonne, what's going on?" Silence. "I've been trying to reach you girls for 2 days. No one's returning my calls. Sandra won't even open her door. What did I do?" I heard her take a shaky breath. "Dad, I can't talk about this right now." "Can't or won't?" "Dad, Yvonne, I'm your father. If I did something wrong, just tell me. Let me fix it." Her voice cracked. "I don't think you can fix this." My heart stopped. What does that mean? "I have to go." "Yvonne, wait. We'll talk at Christmas dinner, okay? We'll figure it out then." "Figure what out?" But she'd already hung up. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at my phone, feeling something I hadn't felt since I was a child. Powerless. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove past each of my daughter's houses. Sandra's lights were on. I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. Family. Laughter. Life. Without me. Aurora's house was the same. Cars in the driveway. Christmas lights blinking. The glow of a TV through the window. Yvonne's house had the most cars. A family gathering, maybe. I wasn't invited. I drove home and sat in my recliner in the dark. The Christmas tree I'd put up, because Margaret always said a house needs a tree, blinked red and green in the corner. I decorated it for no one. Bought presents for grandchildren who suddenly didn't want to see me. Made plans for a holiday that had already excluded me. And I still didn't know why. On December 23rd, I got a text from Marcus. "Dinner is at 5 p.m. on Christmas Eve. See you then." Not "looking forward to seeing you." Not "can't wait to celebrate." Just the logistics, like I was an obligation. I texted back, "Should I bring anything?" He responded 3 hours later, "Whatever you want." So I went to the grocery store and bought a pie. And on Christmas Eve, I drove to Yvonne's house with my store-bought apple pie and my breaking heart, knowing that something terrible was waiting for me at that table. I just didn't know what yet. But I was about to find out. Christmas dinner dragged on like a funeral. Everyone ate in near silence, the only sounds being forks scraping plates and the occasional forced, "Could you pass the salt?" I watched my daughters avoid my eyes. I watched my grandchildren finish early and flee to the other room. I watched Marcus refill wine glasses like he was preparing everyone for something difficult. And I watched Gertrude, quiet, mousy Gertrude, sitting at the far end of the table, barely touching her food, her face pale and drawn. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I set down my fork. The clink against the plate sounded loud in the tense silence. "All right." Everyone's head snapped up. "Someone needs to tell me what's going on." Yvonne's eyes immediately filled with tears. Sandra looked at Aurora. Aurora looked at her plate. "I'm serious," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "I've been shut out for weeks, ignored, avoided, treated like I don't exist, and I want to know why." Thelma cleared her throat uncomfortably. "Frank, maybe we should—" "No." I cut her off, something I'd never done before. "No more, maybe later, or not now. I'm 69 years old. I've earned the right to be spoken to directly. So somebody tell me, what did I do?" The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour. Then Sandra spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Gertrude told us what you said." My blood went cold. "What I said? What are you talking about?" Sandra's hands were shaking. "About us. About how you really feel." I looked around the table, completely lost. "I don't understand." Aurora's voice was thick with tears. "She told us, Dad. She told us everything." "Everything about what?" Yvonne finally spoke, her voice breaking. "About how you never wanted daughters." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "Gertrude told us," Sandra continued, tears now streaming down her face. "She said you told her that having 3 daughters was the biggest disappointment of your life, that you wanted sons, that we were failures." I couldn't breathe. "That's not— I never—" "She said you told her you only stayed married to Mom because you felt trapped," Aurora said, her voice rising with emotion. "That we ruined your dreams, that you resented us every single day." The room was spinning. I looked at Gertrude. She was staring at her plate, her face completely expressionless. "That is a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "I never said any of that. I would never—" "Why would she lie?" Thelma interrupted, her voice sharp and defensive. "Gertrude wouldn't make something like that up. She's not that kind of person." "But I am." I looked at my daughters. "You think I'm the kind of person who would say those things? About my own children?" Yvonne was sobbing now. "She said you told her you wished we'd never been born." Something inside me broke. "Look at me," I demanded. "All of you. Look at me." Slowly, reluctantly, they did. "I have loved you 3 girls from the moment you were born. Every single one of you. When Yvonne came into this world, I cried. When Sandra was born, I held her for 3 hours straight because I couldn't put her down. When Aurora arrived, I told your mother we had been blessed 3 times over." My voice cracked. "I coached your soccer teams. I stayed up all night when you were sick. I walked you down the aisle. I held my grandchildren and thanked God I lived long enough to see them." Tears were running down my face now. "I built this table with my own hands so we could sit together as a family. I have never, not once, not ever, regretted having daughters. You are the greatest accomplishment of my life." The silence was different now, uncertain. But Thelma wasn't done. "Gertrude has no reason to lie, Frank. She's family. She was just trying to help us understand why you've been so distant lately." "Distant?" I almost laughed. "I've been distant because you've all been shutting me out. I didn't know why until 5 minutes ago." I turned to Gertrude. She still wasn't looking at me. "Tell them," I said. "Tell them the truth." She didn't move. "Gertrude, look at me." Finally, she lifted her eyes, and in that moment, I saw something I hadn't expected. Fear. "Tell them you're lying," I said quietly. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'm not lying." Her voice was so soft, so small, but she said it, and I watched my daughters' faces harden again. "Dad," Yvonne said gently, like she was talking to a confused child, "maybe you don't remember saying these things. Maybe it was a bad day, or you were frustrated, or—" "I did not say them." My voice rose, louder than I intended. "I don't care what she told you. It is not true." "Don't yell at her," Marcus said, standing up. "You're making everyone uncomfortable." "I'm making everyone uncomfortable." I looked around the table in disbelief. "You've all decided I'm guilty without even asking me. without giving me a chance to defend myself. You just believed her. Because she has no reason to lie, Thelma repeated. And I do? No one answered. I stood up, my legs shaky beneath me. I see. So this is how it is. After 69 years, after raising 3 daughters and loving them with everything I had, after losing their mother and trying my best to stay close to them, after all of that, you believe a woman you barely know over your own father. Dad, please, Aurora whispered, but I was done. I grabbed my coat from the back of my chair. Merry Christmas, I said, and I walked out. No one followed me. I sat in my car in the driveway, hands gripping the steering wheel, my whole body shaking with rage and heartbreak and something I couldn't even name. Through the window, I could see them all still sitting at the table, talking about me, believing her. I drove home through empty streets, past houses glowing with Christmas lights and families that actually wanted each other. And when I got home, I didn't turn on any lights. I just sat in my recliner in the dark and realized something terrible. If I didn't find out why Gertrude had lied, and prove it, I would lose my family forever. So that's exactly what I decided to do. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen, the same pen Margaret used to use for her grocery lists, and I started writing. Everything I knew about Gertrude. It wasn't much. She was Thelma's younger sister. Divorced. No kids. She'd worked as a medical billing specialist before retiring a few years ago. She lived alone in a small house about 30 minutes away. She came to family events but usually stayed quiet, hovering at the edges. Forgettable. That was the word that kept coming to mind. Gertrude was forgettable. So why would someone so forgettable tell such an unforgettable lie? I stared at that question until the sun came up. Then I remembered something. Margaret's funeral. 3 years ago. Gertrude had been there, of course, sitting in the back. She'd come up to me afterward holding my hands, telling me how sorry she was. And then she'd said something odd. Margaret was so generous. I'll never forget what she did for me. At the time, I'd thought it was just generic funeral talk. But now, I went to the closet where I'd stored Margaret's things. Boxes of papers I couldn't bear to go through, bank statements, medical bills, cards, and letters. I started digging. It took me 2 hours, but I found it. A check register from 5 years ago. Margaret's handwriting. Gertrude, $15,000. Medical expenses. $15,000. I sat back, staring at that entry. Margaret had never mentioned it to me. But that wasn't unusual. She handled a lot of our finances, and she had a soft heart. If someone needed help, she gave it. But did Gertrude pay it back? I went through every bank statement from the past 5 years. Every deposit, every transaction. Nothing. Not a single payment from Gertrude. My hands were shaking now, but not from age or fear. From fury. I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Bill Richardson, retired lawyer, old friend from my days working construction. If anyone could help me figure this out, it was Bill. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Frank, that you?" "Bill, I need a favor." "Shoot." "If someone borrowed money and promised to pay it back, but there's no written contract, just a check, can that money be recovered?" There was a pause. "Technically, yes, but it's hard to prove without documentation." "Why? Someone owe you money?" "My late wife loaned someone $15,000. They never paid it back." "Damn. I'm sorry, Frank. Who was it?" "Someone who's currently destroying my life." Another pause. "You want to tell me what's going on?" So I did. I told him everything. The Christmas dinner, the accusations, Gertrude's lies. When I finished, Bill was quiet for a long moment. "Frank, you need to find out if she came into any money after Margaret died. If she had the means to pay and didn't, that establishes intent. And if she's lying about you now to cover up the debt, well, that's a whole other problem." "How do I find that out?" "You hire someone who knows how to look." "A private investigator?" "Exactly." I'd never hired a PI in my life. Didn't even know how to start. But Bill gave me a name. Eddie Vance. A guy who used to do background checks for law firms, now semi-retired but still taking occasional cases. I called him that afternoon. Eddie had a gravelly voice and got straight to the point. "What do you need?" "I need to know if someone came into money in the last few years. Settlement, inheritance, anything." "Name." "Gertrude Palmer." "What am I looking for specifically?" "Proof that she could have paid back a debt and chose not to." "Got it. This'll cost you $1,200 up front." $1,200. That was a lot on my fixed income. But losing my family forever? That cost more. "Do it." 3 weeks later, Eddie sent me a file. I opened it at my kitchen table with trembling hands, and there it was. Gertrude Palmer had sued her former employer for wrongful termination and workplace discrimination. The case settled out of court for $87,000. She received the money 6 months after Margaret died. I stared at that number until it blurred. $87,000. She could have paid us back 20 times over. But she didn't. And then I found something else in the file. Eddie had included email records he'd somehow obtained. I didn't ask how. An email chain between Gertrude and Margaret from 5 years ago. "Margaret, don't worry about paying me back right away. Take care of yourself first." "Gertrude, you're a saint, Margaret. I promise, as soon as the settlement comes through, you'll get every penny back." "Margaret, we'll be here whenever you're ready." I read that exchange 10 times. Margaret had trusted her, had been kind to her, and Gertrude had stolen from her. But there was more. I kept digging through Margaret's old emails, the ones I'd backed up on an external hard drive but never had the heart to delete. And I found something that made my blood run cold. A message from Yvonne, sent to Margaret 2 months before Margaret died. "Mom, I was going through some of your old bank statements for the insurance paperwork. There's a large check to Gertrude from a few years ago. Did she ever pay that back? Just want to make sure we have everything accounted for." Margaret never responded to that email. She died a week later. But Yvonne had asked the question. And that meant at some point in the last 3 years, my daughters might have started wondering about that money. Might have started asking questions. Questions Gertrude couldn't afford to answer. So she made sure they'd never believe anything I said. She poisoned them against me before I could ever tell them the truth. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by papers and proof, and I understood. Gertrude hadn't just stolen from my wife. She'd stolen my family. And now I was going to take it back. Frank has the proof. $87,000, emails, lies, and a woman who destroyed him to cover her tracks. But what will he do with this information? Will he confront her privately? Will he expose her in front of everyone? Or does Frank have something even more devastating planned? You need to see next chapter. It's the moment Frank stops being the victim and becomes the one in control. Like this video if you're ready to see justice served. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because the confrontation is coming and it's going to be brutal. Comment "Expose her, Frank" if you want to see Gertrude pay for what she did. The revenge is about to get ice cold. I spent 2 days planning what I was going to say. Not out of uncertainty. I knew exactly what Gertrude had done. But because I needed to get this right, one chance. That's all I had. On December 28th, I sent a text to my daughters. "Family meeting at my house, tomorrow at 2 p.m. It's important. Please come." Sandra responded first. "Dad, I don't think that's a good idea." Aurora, "We need some space right now." Yvonne didn't respond at all, so I sent another message to all 3 of them. I have proof about what really happened, about what Gertrude did. If you don't come, you'll regret it for the rest of your lives. 2 p.m. Please. This time, Yvonne responded. "We'll be there." The next day, I cleaned my house for the first time in weeks. I set up folding chairs in the living room because I knew there'd be more people than usual seating allowed. I made coffee, real coffee, using Margaret's machine, which I finally figured out, and I laid out all my documents on the coffee table in neat folders, one for each daughter, one for Thelma, and one for Gertrude. They arrived together at 2:07 p.m. Yvonne, Sandra, Aurora, their husbands, Thelma, and Gertrude. I watched through the window as they gathered on my front porch, clearly having discussed a strategy beforehand. They looked like they were preparing for an intervention. In a way, they were right. I opened the door before they could knock. "Come in." They filed in silently, taking seats but avoiding the folders I'd placed on the table. Gertrude sat the farthest away, in the corner chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I remained standing. "Thank you for coming," I said. My voice was calm, steady. I'd practiced this. "I know you don't want to be here. I know you think I'm the villain in this story. But I'm going to show you something today, and after I do, you'll never look at this family the same way again." "Dad," Yvonne started. "Please," I said, holding up my hand. "Let me finish. Then you can say whatever you want." I picked up the first folder. "5 years ago, your mother loaned Gertrude $15,000 for medical expenses," she said. "Margaret gave it to her without hesitation because that's who your mother was. She helped people." I opened the folder and pulled out the copy of the check register. "Here's the check, your mother's handwriting, December 14th, 5 years ago." I placed it on the table. Sandra leaned forward slightly, looking at it. I saw recognition flicker across her face. She knew her mother's handwriting. "Gertrude promised to pay it back," I continued. "She said she was waiting for a settlement, a lawsuit against her former employer." I pulled out the next document. "Here's that lawsuit, Gertrude Palmer versus MedTech Solutions, wrongful termination and workplace discrimination. The case settled out of court." I placed the settlement document on the table. For $87,000. The room went completely still. "She received this money 6 months after your mother died." I pulled out the bank records Eddie had obtained. The payment deposited into her account on March 15th, 3 years ago. $87,000. I looked directly at Gertrude now. She had gone pale, her hands trembling in her lap. She could have paid back the $15,000. She could have paid it back 5 times over, but she didn't. Not a single penny. "Dad." Aurora's voice was uncertain now. "Wait," I said. "There's more." I pulled out the printed emails. "These are messages between Gertrude and your mother. In them, Gertrude promises, and I quote, 'As soon as the settlement comes through, you'll get every penny back.'" I placed them on the table one by one, like evidence in a courtroom. "She lied to your mother. She took the money and disappeared." Thelma's face had turned red. "Frank, this is—" "I'm not finished," I said, my voice harder now. 2 months before your mother died, Yvonne sent her an email asking about that money, about whether Gertrude had paid it back. Your mother never got the chance to respond, but Gertrude knew. She knew you girls were starting to ask questions. I looked at each of my daughters, and she knew that eventually you'd ask me. The pieces were clicking together. I could see it in their faces. So she made sure you'd never believe a word I said. She told you I hated you, that I resented you, that you ruined my life. She poisoned you against me before I could ever tell you the truth about what she'd done." I turned to Gertrude. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "Tell them," I said quietly. "Tell them the truth." She didn't speak. "Tell them you lied about what I said. Tell them you made it all up to protect yourself." Her mouth opened. A sob came out. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The room exploded. "You're sorry?" Sandra stood up, her voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed our father. You made us think he hated us." "I didn't know what else to do," Gertrude sobbed. "I was scared. I spent the money. I couldn't pay it back. And when Yvonne started asking questions, I panicked. I thought if they wouldn't listen to Frank, they'd never find out." "Get out!" Aurora screamed. "Get out of this house." Thelma sat frozen, staring at her sister like she'd never seen her before. Gertrude stood, stumbling toward the door. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Don't," I said coldly. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to your sister. Apologize to my daughters for what you stole from them." But Gertrude just ran. Out the door, into her car, gone. The silence she left behind was deafening. Then Yvonne turned to me, her face crumbling. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry." She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Sandra and Aurora joined her, all three of my daughters holding on to me like they were drowning. "I'm sorry," Yvonne kept saying. "I'm so sorry we didn't believe you." I held them tight, my own tears finally coming. "You didn't know," I whispered. "You couldn't have known." "We should have trusted you," Aurora said. "We should have asked you first." "It's okay," I said, even though part of me wasn't sure it was. But they were my daughters, and I loved them. That's what mattered. 3 days after the confrontation, I received a certified letter from Gertrude's attorney. She was offering to pay back the $15,000 plus interest. No admission of wrongdoing regarding the lies, just the money. I sat at my kitchen table staring at that letter for a long time. $22,000. That's what it came to with interest. Blood money. I could have taken it. Could have sued for emotional distress on top of it. Bill said I had a case, but that's not what I did. I called my daughters and told them about the offer. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground, and I showed them the letter. "Take it," Sandra said immediately. "She owes you." "She owes Mom," Aurora corrected. Yvonne was quiet, studying my face. "What do you want to do, Dad?" I folded the letter and put it back in my pocket. "I want to record what really happened, every detail, and I want Gertrude to admit, on record, exactly what she did and why." "And then?" Yvonne asked. "Then I want her to know that I'm not taking her money. I want her to live with what she did, every single day, no check to clear her conscience." Sandra's eyes widened. "Dad, the money won't bring your mother back," I said, "and it won't give me back the 3 months I spent thinking my own children hated me. What I want is something Gertrude can never repay." "What's that?" Aurora asked. "The truth, on record, so that no one, not her, not Thelma, not anyone, can ever rewrite what happened here." 2 weeks later, Gertrude agreed to my terms. We met at Bill's office. Gertrude, her lawyer, Bill, and me. I brought a recording device. For 47 minutes, Gertrude admitted everything. The loan, the settlement, the fear of being exposed, the lies she told about me. All of it. When it was over, I made copies, sent one to each of my daughters, kept one for myself, and sent one to every member of the extended family. Within a week, Gertrude was uninvited from every family gathering. Thelma stopped speaking to her. People who had known her for years quietly cut ties. She'd isolated herself, just like she'd tried to do to me. But here's the thing. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. My daughters came back into my life, slowly at first. Coffee dates, Sunday dinners. They apologized over and over, sometimes in the middle of conversations, like they couldn't stop saying it. "We should have known. We should have trusted you. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry." And each time I told them the same thing. "You're human. Humans make mistakes. What matters is that you're here now." Because they were. Yvonne started calling me every morning, just to check in. Sandra brought the grandkids over on Saturdays. Aurora helped me finally clean out Margaret's closet, something I couldn't do alone. We were healing. Slowly. Carefully. But healing. On Christmas Eve, 1 year after the dinner that nearly destroyed us, we gathered again. At my house this time, around the table I'd built with my own hands, my 3 daughters, their families, even Thelma, who apologized to me privately and meant it. Gertrude wasn't there. would never be there again. We said grace. We ate. We laughed, tentatively at first, then genuinely. And when Yvonne raised her glass for a toast, her eyes met mine. "To Dad," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "To the man who taught us that truth matters, that family isn't perfect, and that love doesn't give up." Everyone raised their glasses. To Frank. To Grandpa. To Dad. I looked around that table at the faces I loved more than anything in this world, and for the first time in over a year, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever. I felt like I belonged. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my recliner with a cup of coffee. The house was quiet. The Christmas tree lights blinked softly in the corner. My phone buzzed. A text from Yvonne. "Love you, Dad. Thank you for not giving up on us." I typed back, "Never. Not ever." I set the phone down and closed my eyes. Gertrude had tried to take everything from me. My reputation, my family, my dignity. But she couldn't take the one thing that mattered most. The truth. And in the end, the truth had set me free. Not through revenge, not through money, but through something much simpler, much harder, and much more powerful. Forgiveness for those who deserved it, and consequences for those who didn't. I'm Frank Miller. I'm 69 years old, and this is my story. Frank didn't just survive, he reclaimed his dignity, his family, and his truth. Without violence, without bitterness, just one man refusing to let lies define him. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that truth always finds a way, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If Frank's journey touched your heart, subscribe to this channel for more stories of real people facing impossible situations with courage and grace. And if you've ever been lied about, betrayed, or erased, leave a comment. Tell your story. You're not alone. Frank proved that redemption isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just sitting at a table with the people you love, knowing you fought for the truth and won. Hit that notification bell. More stories like this are coming. Stories that prove dignity doesn't disappear with age, and that family, real family, is always worth fighting for. Thank you for walking this journey with Frank. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and never let anyone rewrite your story.